Hello, my friends, and I hope you are having a fantastic day. Today, I want to cover some more gaming news. We have on our hands a CEO and creative director who has decided to step out of the lockstep and put himself on the line, quite literally. And because of it, people have, in fact, been attacking him. You see here a tweet from Thomas Mahler, who is the CEO, creative director of Moon Game Studios. He's the designer and director of Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and No Rest for the Wicked, which I may buy as soon as I have the money. But it's a long read here, and we're going to go through it. Thomas writes, I already know I might get myself into trouble once again by posting this, but I just replied to Maurice Weber 42, a German journalist who is affiliated with the German outlet GameStar. I do think it's especially important these days that we always remind ourselves to keep an open mind and try to understand even those who think differently than we do. Here's my response to him complaining about people who are apparently fed up by, quote, woke culture, end quote. I think it all makes sense, Maurice. This is basically a backlash against cancel culture and similar phenomena because everyone has had enough of that nonsense. I'd suggest you take a more nuanced view, especially since you position yourself as a journalist. Yet you often display a narrow-minded attitude and don't seem to question exactly what's going on. And that is something we should expect from a journalist. Just because you personally haven't been affected by cancel culture doesn't mean there hasn't been a lot of foolishness happening, and it's still ongoing, and it's a matter of time before it impacts you too. Consider this famous statement. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not Jewish. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Instead of allowing artists to just be artists, Hollywood and most of the game developers on the West Coast have decided it's appropriate to use films and video games as platforms to push their own political agenda. If you argue otherwise, I would expect a journalist like you to back it up with thorough research. Moreover, it's become the norm to point fingers at others, particularly at those who may think differently from us. Rather than allowing others to be different and listening to them regardless, we attack them outright. It's frankly eerily reminiscent of old Nazi tactics. Anyone who doesn't conform is ridiculed, and it's suggested they be shamed, fired, and have their careers destroyed. This has been the approach over the past few years, and I know plenty of people whose careers have been devastated by trivialities and misinformation, and they continue to suffer today. You seem unaffected, and thus you refuse to consider a more open perspective. Your apparent lack of empathy in this matter is not only unhelpful, but also shows a considerable amount of ignorance. Allow me to also play critic for a moment. At GameStar, you do the same thing. Instead of cleaning your own house, you wield the "we report and earn from our articles, but beware, those guys are the real villains" narrative, just to ensure the spotlight never falls on you, aligning yourselves just so. That's precisely why we've cut you off. We find such morally dubious practices unacceptable and refuse to support them. You lack the initiative to conduct your own journalistic investigations, as it seems too much work when the next clickbait article is due the next day. The sad thing is that young journalists like yourself never knew anything else. The more outrage you generate, the more clicks you get. And that's how you make your living, at the expense of others, which apparently doesn't matter as long as you're seen as the good guys. I hope in the future you will approach the world with more skepticism and openness, and truly consider both sides instead of aligning yourselves with one to amplify their propaganda. It is deeply, deeply important after everything that happened over the past couple of years that we always question hidden agendas, always try to be loving and show understanding even with those we vehemently disagree with. Proper discourse is more important than ever, and journalists need to understand their responsibilities in all this and start acting like journalists again. And that is a message I wholeheartedly support on all levels. I know a lot of people want to take vengeance and want to make people suffer the same way we have, but that doesn't fix anything. It just continues the cycle. I know plenty of people who disagree with me on that point, but we have plenty more to cover. So, in response to this, you have Michelle Adam. Bro got more negative responding comments than likes on the same post in German and is now farming replies in other languages, in a clown face. Thomas responds, I think it nicely shows the way the echo chamber works on social media. I'm not out to fight a war, just took the opportunity to highlight that there are extremes on both sides, and both are dumb. Gnid Deschane responds, of course you out for a fight because you claim to the wokeness and then you cancel someone who isn't your political opinion? What? And Thomas responds, no, nobody wants a fight. Just don't be surprised if the people that the press tried to cancel stand up for themselves at some point to point at the injustices being perpetrated. I'm just kindly asking for people to use their head and think more critically, which is a dangerous thing to do. People don't like to be told to think. Doesn't matter what side you're on. They hate thinking. A more notable respondent is Philip Weber, narrative director at CD Projekt Red, previously on The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt and Cyberpunk 2077. Philip says, I do remember when you were quite happy to publicly shit on us a while ago, so please make sure to apply those principles you ask of others for yourself as well. Thomas responds, I always try to. Feel free to call me out whenever I'm not true to my words. And I was right in the end, wasn't I? It's commendable that you folks turned things around, and I love you folks for that. But that doesn't excuse that you sold a full-price game while trying to hide the fact that it was broken and untested. And your marketing department tried their best to cover things up. This is just a shady practice and should be condemned whenever it happens. By the way, you work in the AAA industry. I think you're playing with fire by posting publicly like this. You're a cog in a machine that doesn't really care about you, so be careful. And he's not wrong. You do have people down in the comments here trying to defend the commentary there, but honestly, Thomas is just, the man's right. CD Projekt Red sold an absolutely abysmal product in the first place with Cyberpunk 2077, and it took them forever to fix it, and people are tired of buying broken games. At least when I buy something that is a early release, I understand it may be broken, and it'll probably get fixed, versus selling me a full-price AAA game saying that it's going to be great and then having to deal with crashes. I didn't have it half as bad as other people did. In response to that, you have this venture capitalist ghoul say, here's an example of you not being true to your words, and a picture of the Glassdoor review for Moon Studios. You see here, you have 12 reviews, no jobs, 11 salaries, 1 benefits, 10 diversity. What? Okay. 1 to 50 employees, revenue unknown, Vienna, Austria for location, company type private, competitors unknown. 10% would recommend to a friend. This review is a 1-star, says stay clear, developer, current employee more than 3 years, from Denver, Colorado. Says pros, projects are great, community gives Moon only love. And then you can barely read the rest of this. It says co-founders are great at smiling at the camera, but they are pure toxicity. I've witnessed shipping with them now for the first, then you don't get to read the rest of it. I tried to go onto Glassdoor to get the rest of the information on this, but I didn't want to give them all the information they wanted. It felt far too invasive for me. You have Gromaz. He responds, developer, looks really credible, totally not a fabricated review. Thomas Mahler responds, wait, we never had a developer who lived in Denver, LOL. Now you have venture capitalist ghoul again, who says, are you going to claim all these are fake too? Got another one, says burdens go through good talent, with a 1-star, says that they work with amazing people, fully remote, high quality bar, but says the environment's very toxic, studio leadership doesn't know what it's want, but will berate you. Pros wants to rate the art team and management separately. The art animation and art team was an absolute joy, but say they've never spoken with a bigger bully than Thomas Mahler. The absolute arrogance spewing from him is extremely unprofessional. Here's dysfunctional studio. The pros are work with talented artists and designers on high-profile titles. Looks good in CV. Cons, high contractor turnover. Results in lots of code refactoring, more bugs, hacks, missed deadlines, and more crunching. Here's a 3D artist that says it's a messy place to work. Pros can get on with the work at own pace. Cons, some people are tough to work with. Okay. Here's a 4-star review, a challenging and unique workplace with huge potential. Pros, Moon is definitely not your typical studio, therefore the experience of working here is not easily summed up in a few words. Cons, Moon certainly isn't perfect and has quite a few issues. Some are inherent to what Moon does, and you can't read the rest of that. Another 4-star, one-of-a-kind studio. Says pros, a great team. You get to work with a lot of incredibly talented and smart people across the board. Cons, a lot of work. Making ambitious games with a mid-sized team is no easy task. And something about the attention to detail that you can't quite read. Here's another, I don't see any stars. Says the worst experience of my professional career. Pros, a talented team, team retreats, being able to work from home, working on games like Ori will get you hired at better studios. Cons, bullying, overwork, CEO calling at 4 a.m. because you're not at your desk, stress, burnout, verbal abuse, high turnover of staff. Then there's a 2-star, know what you're getting into. Pros, remote, talented staff, opportunity to learn, hours okay if not crunching. Cons, toxic management, at each other's throat and passing blame to the rest of the team, and personal feel, non-constructive feedback. And the last 4 stars says tough, demanding, but rewarding, and here it cuts off great team, remote, rewarding on high profile / quality products. Overall, it seems like they all agree that the product is quality, but seem to feel the management is, quote, bullying, end quote, which honestly, when you have a high quality product, it usually comes with a high demand from your employer. And a lot of people today confuse that high demand with bullying. I didn't work there, so I can't say for sure, but we will touch a little more on that in a second. In response to that, Thomas says, probably, I don't know, since this is all anonymous, which is one of the major problems with Glassdoor. Except for 2 cases in 15 years, I can't remember ending any working relationship with anyone who's been at Moon in a negative way. We go out of our way to ensure that everyone is well taken care of, even if they might leave us during stressful times, etc. Kennedy and me always try to ensure that we have a white vest, since reputation means a lot in this small industry. You won't hit the jackpot with every person you hire. Sometimes it just turns out it wasn't the right fit. But there's never a reason to be a jerk about these things. And we have received tons of messages over the years from people who left Moon that thanked us for starting their careers, bringing them financial freedom, and having been part of projects that really meant something to them. So overall, we're super proud of what we've built. I don't know anything about Glassdoor and what the site is about, so I can't really speak to this stuff in an educated manner. Grums tweets out, the CEO creative director Thomas Mahler of No Rest for the Wicked, who spoke up against council culture, is making a fantastic looking game. Check it out from Moon Game Studios video and thumbnail. That Park Place response, he also fired a game consultant who attempted to justify DEI. Grums went on to retweet That Park Place and say we have something in common. Like Thomas Mahler, I fired the same agitator developer from my studio for causing problems. Vincent Martin responds, not according to him, but Grums seems to like to rewrite history from what I've seen. Also, That Park Place network was lacking in ethics and logic. Is it ethical for the Trent report to simp for Grums while writing? Is there not more? But here you see Alexander Brazzi, who I did do the video a little while back where Mahler took him to task for his behavior and explained why he fired him. Brazzi says, oh, you need more on Kern. Dude flew me out to California to train me as a producer. Training proceeded to be him reading from a book and getting pissed when I asked him questions. Then asked me to write adware to inject into World of Warcraft. When I refused, kicked me to the curb, stranded me thousands of miles from my home, as he was annoyed I had too many opinions on game design for a producer. I was employee 6 at Red 5. If it hadn't been for Rob Pardo and Jeff Kaplan at Blizzard, I would have been broke, stranded, and wrecked in the gaming industry. Which Grums comes back with, yeah, that's completely made up. Zelnath was a young kid and I gave him a chance at his first game job. He was hire number 6 and I only fired him after the other 5 asked me to please get rid of him multiple times for being incredibly abrasive and random. I had a soft spot and he had multiple chances. Now he's pushing DEI and got fired for the same reason at No Rest for the Wicked. When I read it, I was like, guess that kid never grew up. I went to tell him directly, but of course he blocked me after firing off his hit and run Grums tweet. And here you see where he is in fact blocked, the article from That Park Place, and the tweet that initially got the Park Place article started. And then a lot of people talking about how he's been fired twice and maybe it's him and not them. But yeah, it's a lot of information. It's a lot of stuff to think about, but realistically, I don't think that it's too hard. I do believe that Thomas Mahler is trying to do the right thing with Moon Studio, meaning create good games that entertain people and give people what they want. It sounds to me they're trying to make things work as best they can. Being a fully remote studio has got to be hard. You are always going to have people who misunderstand context, especially if you're dealing mostly in text as opposed to video calls and so forth. And then there's going to be people who just don't fit in with whatever culture you have. Some people are a little more sensitive to jokes. Other people are just little bitches. You just don't know. But overall, yeah, I'm going to be buying No Rest for the Wicked. You should take a look at it if you want to. Maybe it's a game you'll like. Do you think the workplace accusations are important? Do you think maybe it's all too good to be true? Have you played No Rest for the Wicked, and do you think the game's any good? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. If you really liked it, you can feel free to share it around, and I will catch you later.